Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for your patience. I'd like to welcome everybody to this morning's meeting and call the meeting to order. The time is now 9:04. Stephanie, will you please take attendance?
Yes, thank you, Holly. Good morning, everyone. Adrienne Cochran.
Present.
Good morning. Andrea Comer.
Present. Good morning.
Good morning. Ellen McKitterick.
Present.
Jen Scott has not joined us yet. And Mike Saltis has not joined us yet. And Holly Williams.
Present.
All right, thank you. We have a quorum.
I'm sorry, did you confirm we do or we don't?
We do.
We do. Okay, thank you.
Yes, we do.
Thank you. So I'd like to just take a second and thank any members of the public who are joining us for our meeting this morning. And we're going to move on to a review and approval of the January 24th, 2025 meeting minutes. May I have a call to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none. A second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. All right, the motion carries. And then we're now moving on to the spring group, who's going to give a presentation of our actuarial quarterly update.
Everyone, good morning. See you again. Share my screen.
We can see your screen.
Great, thank you. So the purpose of my presentation today is to provide the update, the quarterly update. So these are the results for the fiscal year, the second quarter of the fiscal year, ending December 2024. So the total overall period is July 2024 through December 2024. Go through the key results like I usually do. Overall, the net activity for this period, this 6-month period, was a negative 16.3, which is actually a little bit better than what we had forecasted last quarter. So we had 21.2 million last quarter for this period that was forecasted, and the corresponding number is 16.3. This puts our ending fund balance net of outstanding contributions and net outstanding claims payments at 612.4 million. So overall, it's about 4.9 million better or higher than what we had forecasted last quarter. That improvement is driven by 3 items, primarily higher investment income during the last quarter or last 6 months, slightly higher contributions earned, and slightly lower incurred claims. The largest item of those 3, as you can see in these numbers, is the investment income. Overall, based on these results, fund balance continues to remain strong, and we're well below our target funding metrics. I'll move on to the next few pages. This page provides the graphical illustration as we usually show, showing revenue and expenses and how we end up with the fund balance. Just a graphical illustration of the results we showed in the prior page. So total revenue is 229.8 million, which is added to the fund balance of 628.7 million at the beginning of the fiscal year. Offset by expenses of about 246.1 million. So a net ending fund balance, net of again outstanding contributions and outstanding claims payments, is 612.4 million. I'll just reiterate, these numbers are on an incurred basis, not a cash basis, which Dave will present separately. This page just provides the same results with more detail. I was not intending to go through this at this point. So this is the updated full year results. So what we were talking about previously were the 6-month results. This provides an update of the full year results. What we presented to the board last December, including updates based on our claims analysis that we conducted and presented in December, is shown on the column on the right-hand side, and the update is shown in this column in the middle. So overall, what we had forecasted for the full year was 8.2 million in terms of total net activity. That included contributions earned of 479.9 million, investment income of 24.9 million, incurred claims of 251.5 million, and other expenses. So these are all of the other expenses of 45.1 million. That number is improved based on this quarter's results and what we know today. Two key items that were updated. One, the investment income, as you saw in the prior page, we did have better investment income, so that's reflected, at least in part, in these results for the full year. So we've updated the investment income result from 24.9 to 26 million. The other item that's driving these results is lower expenses. So overall, we adjusted the results to reflect that there was no transfer from the trust fund in January for administration expenses. So the $5 million that's typically transferred in is not taken this on January. So that's the primary driver of the other expenses decreasing. We also made a slight update to reflect results as well. So overall, the net activity is showing as 14.1 million. So that brings up the ending fund balance, or the projected ending fund balance, to $642.8 million. We'll continue to monitor that and make the updates next quarter as well, as we usually do. With that, I'll pause for questions.
I have one question. On your first slide, Harindra. Oh, wait. No, the slide with the graph. So oh, never mind. I answered my own question. I thought that we were showing some degradation in the fund balance relative to the prior report. And then I was trying to reconcile that to your last slide, but then I realized that I flipped the way I was reading this slide. So actuals was on the left. So actually I answered my own question.
So I just to be clear, the actual results are shown on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
And the financial projection that we had from last quarter is shown on the right-hand side. There's the same results as the prior page, but
right.
So everyone.
So some modest improvement from what was previously projected, but largely driven by investment returns, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So not anything in the underlying like claims. We're still seeing claims. Well, I guess we'll go through this.
Well, just to jump in, Holly, the reason Harinder, do you want to go back to the previous slide? Because you alluded to it here. The reason that incurred claims actual is slightly less than incurred claims projected is because we're using the December, or we're using the revised projections that were presented to the board in December. Those revised projections increased what we expect to happen with our claims going forward based on the increase that we saw from July to December. So there's sort of, from a practical perspective, we want to be comparing against what we actually saw, and why that's why we did those revised projections in December, so that we could kind of keep a close eye on what's actually happening with the claims. Claim volume continues to be high. January, we had our second highest claim start. The first was the first January of the program, which was artificially high because of a number of reasons. So in my mind, this was our highest true month ever in terms of claim starts. So we're still seeing growth on the claim side. We're just seeing growth that is more consistent with the updated financials.
Okay, that's helpful. That's helpful. That confirmed what I was thinking. So I'm glad that you reiterated that. So is there anything, does anybody else have any questions? No, just toggling back and forth. No, okay. So thank you, Harinder. We appreciate your presentation this morning as always. We're going to move forward to you, Dave, who's going to give us a review of spending to date.
Thank you very much. And good morning to the committee and members of the public. We're going to go over the results through the month of January 2025, and as well including projections through the end of the fiscal year.
You can see your screen, Dave.
Thank you for the confirmation, Stephanie. So for the month of January, our actual results net were a negative $984,000. So that's a negative variance of $4.7 million. But before anyone gets alarmed, you may be getting deja vu from prior years, because this quarter, this month for this quarter, we did not transfer the $5 million from the contribution fund to the operating fund. We had enough money in our operating reserves, which I will demonstrate later. So it didn't make sense to transfer the $5 million. So we kept it in the interest-bearing account for contributions. Having said that, on the expense side, we were $414,000 ahead of budget, spending just over $1,025,000 in the month of January. Payroll and related expenses was our largest item at over $696,000. Outreach expense was $146,000, and our contact center expense was $132,000. Spending for the year has been just under $7.8 million. That's just under a $3 million expense variance. Our net variance for the year, even though we didn't transfer $5 million, which flows through as technically revenue, is just under a negative $1.9 million. And that's because of the almost $3 million positive expense variance that we've had so far. Moving on to bond activity, our bond activity, which has been pretty consistent over the past few months. It's been about ranging between $90,000 and $110,000 a month spending on our continued fund recovery efforts. Was $110,000 this month, just under $10,000 negative variance for the month. And that's just under $21,000 negative variance for year to date so far. We believe we'll be reasonably close to the budget amount annually of $1.2 million for the year. And we'll be all right in terms of bond money, as we have over $1,665,000 of remaining bond money that remains available to the authority for future use. Moving on to our contribution activity. Our contribution activity for the month of January was just over $64.9 million. That was a $6.3 million positive variance for the month. Usually we've been having negative variances, but I'm happy to report we have a positive variance. The biggest driver of that positive variance was the $5 million that we didn't transfer for our quarterly administrative fee. But even if we hadn't done that, we still would have been $1.3 million ahead of budget for the month. And that was driven by our strong contributions that came in during the month of January, which represent most of the contributions for the fourth calendar quarter of 2024. As you probably remember, there's a 1 month grace period. People are allowed to pay without a penalty. And so most of those employers do indeed pay that month, which is January. And in fact, most of them pay the last week, if not the last business day. We had a positive variance of over $4,058,000, and that offset the negative variance of over $3.1 million for our benefits that were paid in January. The benefits that were paid in January were over $39.8 million. That may seem higher than usual, and that's because this represents 5 weeks of reimbursements from the authority to AFLAC. That averages out to $8 million a week, which has been on the low end for the last few months, because last month in December, the average weekly payout was $8.5 million. This is due to seasonality in benefit payments being paid out. We've seen this over the past couple of years, starting in December into January. It's the holiday season. People don't do major medical events if they don't have to, or they're waiting for the new calendar year for insurance purposes and things of that nature. Erin did say that this January was the highest month for claims in a while, for claims starting in a while, and which is absolutely true, but we didn't see the payments for those claims starting to be paid out until the end of January and into December. So that weekly average will pick up again in February. For our year-to-date activity, we've had $66.1 million. That is over a negative $19.5 million variance year-to-date. Again, that has been driven by the negative variance in benefits, because we have seen the benefit activity go up since we budgeted this about 11 months ago, and we'll be reflecting the new activity in the projection that you'll see in a few minutes. Just a quick note about investment income. We are almost $3.5 million ahead on investment income. We had budgeted at 4%. The current rate that we have in our short-term investment fund account is at about 4.4%. So the short-term investment fund account does trend in terms of what happens with the feds and what and the change in rates they do. So I don't have that magic crystal ball that says what the feds are going to do in the next few months in terms of the rates going down, up, or steady. But I think it's reasonably safe to say that the rate in the short-term investment fund account will not go below the budgeted 4% account through the end of the fiscal year. Since we did get the contribution funds in for the latest quarter, I just wanted to share with everybody how that looks from a trend perspective. If you look all the way to the right at the yellow column, the contributions that came in for the latest quarter were $106.6 million. That was 6.6% more than the same quarter last year. Year to date, our contributions were over $472 million. That was almost $23 million, or 5% higher than the prior year. So we do continue to see contributions going up both on a quarterly basis and an annual basis. And so we'll see what happens next year. But that's certainly been the trend for the past 3 years since we've been tracking contributions and since contributions started. The balance in the contribution fund is just over $632.2 million at the end of January. And so as Harindra mentioned before, we are still solvent, meeting all the criteria associated with solvency, so no issues there. Looking at the balance sheet, we had total assets of $652.1 million. Our largest asset is the short-term investment fund account with almost $609 million in there. The operating reserves, we have over $15.7 million. And so that is why we didn't transfer $5 million from the contribution fund to the operating reserves, because we didn't need to, and we prefer to keep the money in a higher interest-bearing account. And so that's why, again, why we didn't move the money. In terms of where we expect to be at the end of the fiscal year, as I always like to say, we expect our actual net activity to be $1.2 million. That is a $700,000 negative variance. Again, that is because we didn't transfer the $5 million over. But having said that, in terms of expenses, we do expect an over $4 million positive variance. And those reasons continue to be the ones I've stated previously. Payroll and related expenses are driven by a positive variance of less hires than we anticipated, or hiring them later than we expected in the budget. But the more defining item is the fact that the pension overhead rate was lower than what we budgeted, and so that's driving the positive variance. One of the other leading items is our IT consultant expense is lower because we are using mostly bond money for that, because the consultants are using the money to develop and continue to build the fund recovery system, so that qualifies for bond money. And then other positive variances include software licenses. We didn't need to spend as much money on licenses. We saved about $100,000 in Salesforce, and didn't need to spend money on the Cloud Collect platform due to the internal improvements we made. We've had positive variances in outreach, mostly due to the Community Education Coordinator Initiative. We had budgeted for 12 vendors and we only had 7, so there's a positive variance there. Also had some positive variance in legal expense, again, because we only had 7 vendors to set up instead of 12, and it actually took less effort and money to set them up than we have budgeted for. So all those items contribute to the positive operating variance that we expect by the end of the year. And in terms of contribution activity, as Harindra had indicated before, there wasn't any really big significant movement in expectations for both contributions and for benefits since he last discussed it last quarter. So our variance is rather our activity for the end of the year is expected to be almost $14.6 million. That's a little higher than last time, and that's driven by the $5 million positive variance of not transferring the administrative fee. So that is a negative $48.5 million variance compared to budget, again, driven by the additional benefits paid. But we still will be positive by the end of the fiscal year. And so on a cash basis, we project that our fund will be about $580 million. Harindra had indicated earlier that on an incurred basis, our fund would be at over $642 million. And the difference there is because of the contributions that we get in July that are collected in July, which is the next fiscal year, but they're incurred in June on an accrual basis. So that's the difference. I think, Holly, you've asked about that before. So that's the difference between our cash basis numbers and what Spring reports on an incurred basis. So that's where we are for the month of January. I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
Any questions? Nope, I don't see any today. All right. Well, thank you, Dave. We appreciate it. Is there any old business? No. Any new business? All right, not seeing any. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
I second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motion carries and the meeting is adjourned at 9:29 this morning. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day and a good weekend.
Have a
Thank
good
you, everyone.
weekend.
Bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, everybody.